So good afternoon, everyone. I just got confirmed we are the last event before reception, before drinks. But they only serve warm beer, I got confirmed as well, right? So stay with us. This will be an exciting panel, and it's certainly better than warm beer at the reception. So I would like to start this round with a couple of introductions. Please introduce yourself briefly. And we heard in the last panel lots about trust, about data sharing. Here I want to talk more about opportunities, right? Because I think we have fantastic opportunities ahead of us, and I would like to get your take on, from your perspective, what you think is the opportunities, plural, that you envision for the next 30 years. To make it just a little bit harder.
I'm up first on your right. Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Peter, for the invitation. My name is Adina Gillespie. I represent Hexagon, where I am the Vice President for Strategic Initiatives in Geospatial Content Solutions. That's a lot of words for basically, I work on interesting projects with interesting people, and that can look like government, industry, whatever it might be. My background is actually on the space side. So I spent 20 years in the space sector where I was always working for organizations that either build small satellites or operate small satellite constellations. And in fact, I had the great honor of being the master of disasters. It was not a formal title for the first civilian constellation of satellites, which was called the Disaster Monitoring Constellation. So I've been working in this space for a long time, and I joined Hexagon recently because I really like the data, if I'm totally honest. And so if I come to your question, Ingo, on what's the really big opportunity, I can talk about foundational models for GeoAI, and I can talk about 3D, and there's some really cool things that we're all doing in these spaces, which is pretty incredible. But in fact, I'm going to point back to you, David Show, and how interoperability, as it was then, is still very much a huge opportunity for us as a sector. If we can get our systems integrated, working together, making it easy, seamless for our community of people, then we really will crack a lot of new innovation opportunities, because those innovation opportunities that really change things for people are the applications where they're using them. So if we can unlock the interoperability challenge, get the system providers, the service providers, and the end users all in that chain that OGC can help us achieve, then that, from my perspective, is just a huge opportunity for innovation today.
Thank you very much, Adina. Amy.
Hi, I'm Amy Rose. I'm actually the technical director at Overture Maps, so not the CTO, but probably a very similar role. So I've been with Overture for about a year, but I've been in geospatial my entire career, so about 30 years. And the entire time that I've been in geospatial has really focused around data. So I've worked in private sector, I've worked in government, and now nonprofit. And there's always been a challenge, certainly, with just availability, accessibility of data, but certainly the interoperability. And so when I joined Overture, I was really excited about the possibility and the potential of the partnerships that could really make this work. So I used to think, one day we'll have all the data and the analysis, the modeling will be super easy, right? Well, there's a ton of data now, but a lot of it is still locked away in silos. A lot of it is certainly under certain data governance rules that can't be shared. Some of it is open, but not discoverable. And so when I think about the opportunities, definitely attacking interoperability and continuing to push on that, because I don't think that's a solved problem. But I think the real opportunity, and why I think an organization like Overture, OGC is important, is the partnerships.
Great.
Thank you.
My name's Rob Elkins. I'm with Esri, and I work with our products. And I've got the amazing job to work with our amazing customers. And I know we have several Esri customers in the room and around the world, and they're doing great work. For me, it all started, I studied geography in school, and then like, what type of job do you get? Well, I got a job at the tax office. And, you know, and it was about data, and of course the taxation in the US of properties has to do on the size of the parcel. And I was interested in learning more about GIS and some of the mapping technology that was being used, and I realized there was an ability to get the maps on the internet at the time. And that was pretty groundbreaking and pretty unique, which led me to Esri and some of the early internet mapping technology, and where I first learned about WMS and the web mapping standard, and then the web features, the simple features specification from OGC. And it's been a great career being able to work with spatial data and to help people solve problems. That problem I was trying to solve about almost exactly 30 years ago was people wanted to know why their tax bill was that number. And so they wanted to enter their address or enter their name and get a map and see their property. And I think that's the same challenge now for the next 30 years, is we have way more data than we've ever had probably in the history of mankind, at least stored in digital data. And how do we now make that data available for more users, not just the GIS professionals or the data scientist, but for everyone to be able to make better decisions, to be able to understand what's happening around them. And you know, in many ways, that's why we're all here, because we believe that when communities and when organizations work together and use the power of geography, that they can make better decisions. So I think making applications available that harness the power of spatial data is really the future of our industry.
Thank you, Patrick.
Good to see everyone. My name is Patrick Cozzi. I'm the Chief Platform Officer at Bentley and the founder of Cesium. I'm a software developer by trade, specialized in computer graphics. I started my career also in aerospace at AGI, doing spinning globes to visualize satellites orbiting. Then I was doing my master's thesis on visualizing 3D cities, and I got this idea to maybe put the two together and to write a book on these virtual globes. And then I got an email from one of the readers of the book who worked on the open layers, the open source 2D mapping library, who emailed me and introduced himself as a geospatial developer. And that was when I learned about geospatial. And since then, not only have we done the software development for the 3D visualization, but we saw the need to support the whole ecosystem, which is how we've gotten involved with OGC for 3D tiles. And we also do a lot in the graphics world with Kronos, and we try to help bring those two together. And then recently, Cesium joined Bentley Systems, I think almost 3 months ago to the day, to really bring together our platforms for geospatial and then for digital twins with infrastructure to empower software developers to build these experiences. And I think this morning, Peter, with your opening remarks, you were quite modest in OGC's role in this. I think Cesium wanted to support software developers, and knowing the way to do that is openness, interoperability, having the data move freely with open standards. I think Bentley really saw that as a key part, that if they want to embrace software developers, which we do, that's the way to do that. So thank you very much to everything that the OGC has done over the years there. As for the opportunity, I mean, I agree with everyone. I feel geospatial should be everywhere. And I love Jack's remarks this morning. I think he said 10 million daily users. I think it should be 8 billion daily users. And I think in some ways it's there. We're just not getting the credit that we deserve.
We heard the term greater good several times this afternoon. I think, Rob, you mentioned it as well. We do live in exciting and challenging times, right? We do have disaster resilience issues. We do see an amount of urbanization we have never seen before in history. So lots of change. And we have these century big challenges, right? The planet is warming up. And I wonder how these century challenges affect you in private industry. Do they affect you? And how do they affect you, right? Do they have an influence on the products, the research programs, the way you work? Adina, could you start with that?
Yeah, thanks. That's a really great question, actually. So for us in Hexagon, yes, we look at all of these global challenges. We look at the economic challenges, et cetera. And one thing that we really have to wrap our arms around on a regular basis is environmental sustainability. And we have, really big mapping initiatives. We have really, we've developed a team called Our Evolution that is out in the world really trying to have big impact. But what's more than that is for us as an organization, we're embedding it in everything we do because our customers want to see improvements in environmental sustainability. If we sell them the sensor for their aircraft survey program, they want to know it will work more efficiently. They want to reduce their emissions in actually delivering those programs and giving them solutions that can tick that box. It helps them, it helps us, and we also, in the spirit of our colleague from the EU in the last panel, the EU has some really strict environmental sustainability regulations, and as a European country, we meet those and we report against those, and that covers our whole supply chain, our customer base, our own operations, and so the climate change, environmental sustainability theme, it runs through everything we do as an organization, both on the business side and the social environmental impact side.
Thank you. Amy?
Well, I'm not going to speak directly for any of the members of Overture. I will let them speak for themselves. But what I will say is that when we think about data in particular, and we think about the nature of some of the challenges that we face as a society, they're always global, right? There's always some interconnectedness that we're dealing with. And so when we think about those challenges, typically we're thinking about them, long horizon, sure, but the impacts that are happening on a daily basis. And so we need to be able to not just respond to those, but respond to kind of the any place, any time, with a level of detail in your data that can support analysis and a quick turnaround. So being able to have both the data fidelity, but also answer the urgency globally. And so that's a pretty significant challenge, right? And so I think when we talk about, how Overture is approaching that, when we think about data availability and updating and building and maintaining a global map at some level, and doing that at high quality and keeping that refreshed, it really does take a multitude of organizations coming together and collaborating on that. It's very difficult, if not impossible, to do that and be able to share that with anybody at any time to respond to these types of crises. So I think even though a lot of the challenges that we face are longer horizon like you're talking about, really the responses day-to-day efforts depend on high quality data being easily available and being global in nature, just for the seamless aspect of putting it all together.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, because what the work that Overture is doing and its different members is, like you said, probably nothing that one organization could do by themselves. And that efficiency, I think, is not only helping many organizations, but is also helping in the cost and the carbon and all of the different resources that would be required if everyone was trying to do that separately. So I think it's a great example of organizations collaborating in an open way. Maybe it's not the best to talk about common ground here in DC and everyone kind of understanding and coming together, but I think that's what we're trying to do at Esri and with our ArcGIS products, is to help people collaborate, help our customers find common ground. That example with LA, the different departments, but also the LA city working with the county, working with the state, working with the federal, and then even the global organizations. And so I think as organizations can work together and find that common ground, they'll be able to better tackle some of those big challenges. By ourselves, we won't be able to do it. We're going to have to work together.
Yeah. At Bentley, one thing we see globally is a skilled labor shortage in the engineering disciplines. I mean, certainly for the built environment, but also in earthworks. So like in Japan, there's an aging population, and they become skilled in earthworks, like moving dirt, bulldozers, excavators, and dump trucks. Like, can take a decade or longer, and the digital transformation really helps with that challenge there. And it's all geospatial by nature on that construction site, whether it's the machines having GPS on them, there's drones taking photos, there's traditional rover surveys. So we're seeing not a shortage of demand with respect to build, design, operate, maintain, but that labor shortage. And we think the digital transformation could be a big, big improvement.
Thank you. OGC is often referred to as a standardization organization. And I'm not very happy with that, because I think there's so much more, and one of the very important aspects is the community aspect, right? It really brings the entire geospatial and beyond community together. And when I say so, at the same time, we see that we do have a number of organizations competing with each other on stage. And I wonder what your thoughts about that is, because I get this question very often, right? You have this community and they are competing, at the same time they are collaborating, and we have heard that we need collaboration to address these big challenges ahead of us. But I wonder what your thoughts about the dynamics of collaboration versus competition, where do they lie? To give you a challenging question.
Am I up
I'll
first?
start.
Who's your
Please go ahead, Amy.
Well, you know, in Overture, we kind of get to see this every day, right? So we have these task forces and working groups, and competitors are coming together to solve a problem together. And it's really interesting because nobody's holding back their good ideas. All the good ideas are rising to the top, and there's incredibly intelligent discussions going on about how to solve these problems. And so what I find remarkable is that I think what is recognized going into these conversations is where the line between competitive advantage and what's already commoditized is. And if you understand where that line is, then you start to realize, hey, if we can collaborate and bring all our good ideas together on something that we all need but is not going to be our market differentiator, then we can spend more of our time focusing on the thing that will give us that competitive advantage. And I think it's, you know, I think it's kind of hard to understand, and if you haven't been part of one of those kinds of organizations, but it's a really powerful concept. I hope that is more of what we see in the future, where you find the right things, where you can align in a partnership, where you can accelerate that innovation just because you're working together.
Yeah, well, I think we need both. We need the collaboration, and the competition is there, and it helps us, hopefully helps each of our organizations be better. Not to take advantage, but to actually bring an advantage and help our customers, help our users. When I think about the people who sit in front of a device of some form and use Esri software, you know, we want to make sure that we're providing them the best possible experience and opportunity for them to do their important work. So we've continued to evolve as an organization and collaborate with partners and maybe even former competitors. I don't even know what that term means anymore, because we work so much closely together. I mean, the support of 3D tiles in ArcGIS has been huge for Esri, and it's but more importantly, it's been beneficial to the users of 3D tiles and those developers of Cesium JS and of our ArcGIS and of our JavaScript API, you know, coming together. You know, the data that comes off the different sensors from all types of companies are used to make those maps that empower the decisions that needs to happen. So I don't think it's a matter of one's bad, one's right. You know, we're going to have both. I think they can both help us be better organizations.
Yeah, and if I could just jump on that as a well-known competitor to Esri.
Friends.
I'd like to echo everything Rob just said. And I think that competitive landscape is softening over time. But the thing I really want to add to that is the importance of the OGC in the picture. because our competition is good. We push one another to move faster. We push one another to deliver better for the users, for the customers, and if we don't succeed. So that matters, and that helps us all. But at the same time, in order to make sure we're delivering consistently across that community of practice, we need organizations like OGC and Overture maps and others that sort of force us to get in line. Because if one of us, if one of us is adopting part of a standard, then it makes it more challenging for all of us. So having an organization like the OGC that can hold us to account as a community, says these are the standards, and and those big anchor customers that everyone knows and loves in government, if they're saying these standards matter to us, then we all kind of come into line. And so OGC is just essential as part of that collaborative story.
Yeah, I love everything I'm hearing here, and I think I'm wired a little differently. So when I was running Cesium as a separate business, people would ask me, they go, "Who are your competitors?" And I go, "Nobody." I get all sorts of responses. I'd get like, "Well, you don't choose your competitors; they choose you," or "Your customers decide who your competitors are." But we've had nothing but this grow the pie mentality. That there's so much white space, so much opportunity for everyone. The best solution is collaboration, especially when you're building software for other software developers, right? You want to empower them to build with the best-in-class components across the board. And certainly OGC has been a facilitator of this. I've heard some mentions for the 3D tiles community standard. Hexagon was one of the first adopters there, actually, with point clouds. And then all the great work that Esri has done over the years there, with ArcGIS and then using Cesium.js. I mean, we think that's fantastic. I mean, when we see developers building with Cesium, they're typically building with more than Cesium, right? Sometimes it is Cesium plus Esri, sometimes it's Cesium plus NVIDIA Omniverse, and we think that's great. The field as a whole, we're just going faster and bigger because of that collaboration.
We heard that OGC was a facilitator for in many situations, right? I would like to hear what we should be for the next 10 years, right? And maybe you want to reflect a little bit on the role OGC played in the development of your organization. I mean, all of your organizations under different brands sometimes, but have been part of the journey for the last 30 years. And so what's about the next 10 years, right? What do you expect? How do you want us to evolve and develop? What role do you want OGC to play?
Can I jump on that one? So if I reflect on the past, I mean, for us, just in our group alone, never mind the whole of Hexagon, just in our group alone, we are often delivering 1 billion images a month. You couldn't even have imagined that 30 years ago, to deliver 1 billion images a month. The reason that's possible is because of OGC. It's because of the WMS standards and all those standards that were put in place a very long time ago. And now we have an extraordinarily small team actually managing the delivery of that and unlocking the applications for all sorts of users, from open data consortia to commercial customers to government. Everyone has a different business case, use case, type of engagement, and it all comes back into those OGC standards that allows us to deliver it efficiently and cost effectively. My ask for the next 10 years is that OGC strengthens that glue and keeps bringing those communities of practice together, so that we do join up in all of those interoperability questions, and we all have to do it faster. Everyone needs to see things happening faster, and we need those standards to come into play faster. We need, 3D will soon be the core of lots of people's user experience of geospatial solutions. We need to be interoperable from day one. We don't have 30 years to figure that out. So that's my ask for OGC. No pressure, guys.
Well, maybe some pressure. I mean, I will second that. I mean, the speed of technology and innovation now, I mean, it's incredible how much it has exploded, just even in the last 5 years. And so I think, that is a challenge that OGC will probably be up against, is making sure that standards can keep up with that. And I think about, I was talking to somebody who is an urban planner, and they were sharing a story about a college campus that was designed where they didn't put in any pathways between the buildings until after they had already opened the college. And the reason was they wanted to see what pathways were used, and then that's where they were going to actually put down the concrete or the cement. And I think about that analogy for OGC, and maybe that is a way to think about moving more quickly as technology is changing so quickly, is to kind of look at what is being done, what are rising as maybe not de facto standards, but that people are coming to I guess, latch onto, and thinking about evolving those more quickly. Yeah, maybe that is a little pressure.
So I won't pile on and say faster, but faster is always better, or normally. I think two things come to mind. The first is that for decades now, spatial has been special, and it's been many times a niche part of an organization that does GIS, that works with the spatial data. But that's now evolving and changing, and we're moving from a small mapping team in the tax assessors department to the city or the county or the statewide IT department. We're having chief data officers that are very aware of spatial data. And as the geospatial comes from a small niche to being mission critical in many organizations, we need OGC to also become more and to continue to grow across organizations in their mission critical systems. And the mission could be anything from saving lives to selling more chicken. Different organizations have different mission critical objectives, but I'm definitely, as GIS becomes more mainstream, and I think that's a good thing, not a bad thing, as it's becoming more critical in use across IT departments, that interoperability, not just amongst GeoMedia and ArcGIS or Cesium and ArcGIS, but we need to make sure that geospatial is interoperable with CRMs, with ERPs, with other IT mission critical systems to get the power of spatial to more applications and to more users.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, geo touches everything. I want to go back to the speed comment though. So earlier today, Scott and I were speaking about the community standard approach that OGC has. And I think it's brilliant, this idea of something that is implemented, that's getting a traction on its own, and then bringing it into OGC to nurture it and to share it with the community. I think that's the kind of thing that we should be turning the dial up on. And then the other thing we should look at is just the field as a whole. For standardization, they don't want you to move too fast if there's too much innovation happening. But if you move too slow, the ecosystem gets fragmented, right? So I think we should be good stewards of where we want to be on that speed curve. So for example, you could look at Gaussian splats today, which is like point clouds, but you make them look like disks, then it looks like a cool surface. Like that, right? I'm seeing a lot of different vendors produce different file formats for that. And I think that's at the point where there should be some standardization, whether it's from OGC or it's Kronos plus OGC. So I think we can do a lot there to help with this, the sweet spot. The other thing I want to add, when you just look at the brain power and the reach of everyone in this room, I think OGC could do a lot for building awareness of the geospatial field on the world stage.
Okay, we run faster now, I promise. Oh. Look at Peter here. But here's one question. We see that we are at a very disruptive state right now. So if AI figures out topological relationships, right, we can ask lots of questions, our conversational chatbots. And a couple of weeks back, we had the Intergeo Fair in Stuttgart, and they showed us examples where they asked the bot about the average apartment size in Munich. And they just fed all the digital twin data that was in OGC standards, the DGML, into the model, and the answer came back a precise answer. What does it mean for your organizations? I mean, do we need a GIS in 10 years?
We need the data.
We need data. Good. That's a very good diplomatic response. Amy.
So in that model, that demo was only as good as the data that went into it, right?
Right.
It was only able to answer questions based on the data it had received. And so, yeah, if we were going to do another round of what OGC can do to help us is in this large language AI space, where so much of it, if not everything, is dependent on the data, but then also being able to ask the right questions and understand the data. And I don't personally have all the answers there or even know all the challenges. I think we're all still learning. But clearly it goes back to some fundamentals that we all learned probably in school or should have learned around metadata or the tagging or the labeling that the IC community is working on, so that when we ask good or bad questions, it can help us as much as possible get to the right information. Yeah, so I would say that the metadata or the data challenge of AI is going to necessitate the need for GIS more than ever. That system of record, the authoritative system of record that's transactionally updated by many users is still needed.
I would agree with that from the perspective of, something Lori talked about, which is traceability, lineage, provenance. Understanding where the data came from, how it was made, how it was created. Certainly metadata, and I'll be the first to admit I'm not a huge fan of actually writing metadata, but I love it when other people do. But that is a really key thing. And we talk about moving faster and how technology is speeding up. And so we feel this need to speed up as organizations. But that is one thing that I think we typically leave behind as we don't have time to do these things, we've got to move faster. I think this is a really important piece of that, because you won't be able to ask the right questions and get the right answers from AI if you don't have that kind of information backing up your data. So I think that's really key, and we can't forget when we're building data and maintaining data and trying to ask questions of our data, that it's only going to be as smart as we make it.
Maybe I add one anecdote.
Okay.
I can't resist. I won't name the university, and I won't name the person or the team, in fact. But one of the world's top universities, one of the top AI experts, decided to play in geospatial, specifically remote sensing data, lots from space, a little bit of airborne, mostly satellite. And he says, "Oh, Adina, we don't need your GIS. We don't need your remote sensing data. We've just spent 7 days in a course learning about remote sensing data. We don't need any of it. Just send us the data, and our AI will figure it out. And we will build the algorithms. They'll answer the questions. We will all be obsolete." And so off they went to do it. And it's not that easy for geospatial data. And so it broke them. And I think it's possible we could end up in that place. Maybe it gets that much smarter, but the nature of our data and the complexity of the metadata attached to it, I think we're still a little ways away.
Yeah, I think we're definitely going to have a GIS in 10 years, probably 100 years. Certainly we're viewing AI as a co-pilot to help with kind of repetitive tasks where maybe you're laying out a parking lot and you need to look at the grading for drainage, or you're laying out pipes in a facility and what's the best practices for that to kind of get that rolling. The challenge though is the data, and I'm only 3 months at Bentley, so I'm learning a lot here, but a lot of the data, if you're lucky, might be in a PDF that maybe has some annotations, or maybe it's on a piece of paper that then they drew on. So to get that data to a point where then it can be used for training, I think it's going to be some work.
So is it important for OGC to look at these challenges more holistically? I mean, you mentioned provenance, right, traceability, explainability. How was a certain thing produced, a certain data set produced, so that elements like AI, but even manual processes can actually work on it? Do we need to put more emphasis on these aspects?
I think to some degree, yes, from a data governance perspective. I think there's probably a line, but I think in terms of data governance and how we share data, especially as more data is becoming open, and we're trying to kind of unlock these silos, right, make data more discoverable. I think OGC can play a role in helping educate, both this community and the non-geospatial community alike. To your point about, spatial is special, I agree. I think we do ourselves a disservice if we keep saying that, because what that does is it kind of separates us from some of the mainstream to some degree. But I think in some respects, having that spatial knowledge gives us a leg up, and we need to be able to make sure that low code, no code kind of interactions with data is available to everybody. And so I think OGC can play a really big role from that perspective.
Well, Patrick, Adina, any thoughts on holistic approaches? Maybe, I mean, that means a certain shift in focus, right? We focused much more on technology aspects, and provenance has a tiny little technology aspect to it, but it's far more at a more abstract level. So should we, or do we need to approach these aspects with much more emphasis?
I mean, I think it's good to know the context in which we create value, right? But I think we also need to know our lane as well. And I don't know enough about AI to have a strong opinion.
I have one more question. What should OGC not do?
Serve warm beer.
I will forward this request to our organization committee.
I do have an opinion on this one. I would say standards without implementations.
Good. No.
Yeah. Yeah.
Point taken to Scott. Where is he? Just to make sure.
Love you, Scott, though.
All right. Feels like a natural end. No standards without implementation and no warm beer. I can guarantee you we can do one of those, but I'm not going to tell you which one. So everyone, join me in a round of applause for this terrific panel.